If anyone wasn't already convinced, I think Leticia's speech just convinced us all that as much as we need socialism in the US, in much of the world, they need it even more desperately than we do. And Socialist Alternative is affiliated with an international organization of socialist parties called the Committee for a Workers' International that works to strengthen movements of oppressed people fighting for their needs and for socialist politics all over the world. Today, we are very lucky to have with us a representative of the Committee for a Workers' International, Tony Saunois.
Well, thank you for the introduction and greetings from the Committee for a Workers' International to comrades and brothers and sisters here in Seattle. And the first thing we would like to say on behalf of the 47 parties affiliated to our international is thank you, Seattle, for electing Kashama to this City Council. You have scored a great victory. You have scored, in many respects, an historic victory. You will celebrate that victory here today and, of course, in the struggles to come in the future. But I have to tell you, it is not only your victory, we also regard it as our victory as well. We have had communications, and we have to say, your victory here has inspired, has enthused, has given renewed dedication and commitment to many workers around the world, workers from London to Lagos, from Poland to Pakistan, from Belgium to Brazil, who have seen your victory and have been inspired by it. Because what it has done has shown that an alternative, a socialist alternative, is possible. That it is possible to take on the multinationals, the big corporate interests, the rich and the powerful, and to defeat them. And if we look at the world today, possibly never have we needed such a victory, and to see that an alternative is indeed possible and desperately necessary. Capitalism globally is inflicting on the mass of humanity misery, despair and despondency. The tragedy we saw last night in Paris was only the most recent manifestation of that. I'm sure you would join with me in expressing our solidarity with the working peoples of France and Paris who suffered that that horrific tragedy at the hands of the reactionary forces of ISIS. We would express our solidarity too to the peoples of Beirut who were also bombed last week and suffered that human catastrophe. We'd express our solidarity too to the ordinary peoples, the innocents in Iraq, in Syria, in Pakistan, who are also victims to the foreign capitalist policies of Britain, the United States ruling elite of France and others. Because in all cases, the victims of these horrors, and they're simply different sides of the same coin, the victims of these horrors are the innocent working peoples. And our struggle is indeed international. If we look today, I've seen here and been inspired by the struggles of the working peoples of the United States, and particularly here in Seattle. Your struggles that you've waged have been part, really, of similar struggles that we have had to fight in Europe. We are having poured down on our backs a policy of austerity after austerity, of grinding poverty, of desperation. The peoples of Greece, 65% of the youth under the age of 30, unemployed, destitute and no jobs. Upper middle class, previously rich people in the medical profession, evicted from their homes and left with nothing. Entire families left to live and try and eke out an existence, living on the one income, which is a state pension, a minimal state pension paid out to the grandparents. In Britain, where we see a government of the rich, for the rich and by the rich, slashing public services, destroying the welfare state and attacking the most vulnerable. Like you here, comrades, in the United States, for the first time since the Second World War, we now have an explosion of food banks in Britain because of the poverty that people have been driven into. And we see the grotesque spectacle of what this world means. We saw it a few weeks ago in Britain. They brought in a vicious tax, taking away a measly tax concession given to the poorest working people depending on how many children they have. That was voted through the institution of the House of Lords, where you had the grotesque spectacle of multimillionaires flying back from New York, as it happens, to vote in the Parliament to take a few pounds a month away from the poorest people that were getting that particular benefit. And we see that not only in Britain, but indeed throughout Europe and indeed throughout the world. It is a world of grotesque inequality. Never in the history of this planet have we seen such a disequal sharing out of the income. Imagine the situation. You have 85 people, the richest 85 people on this planet have the same amount of wealth and income as the poorest 3.5 billion. What a condemnation of this sort of society that we have. Was there ever a more graphic illustration of why we need to build a new world? A world which is dependent for the interests of all the peoples of the world and not simply for the rich multinationals. You know, they lecture us. These rich corporations, their political defenders in the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Conservative Party in Britain, even leaders of the Labour Party. They lecture us that they defend democracy. They say that socialism is a dictatorship. It is a dictatorship against the interests of people. And yet, what are we living under this world? Remember the figure 147. There are 147 major corporations on this planet which control the entire global production of the world economy. We are living under a dictatorship. It is a dictatorship of the market. It is a dictatorship of the 1% over the 99%. Our struggle, as is your struggle now in Seattle, is to put an end to that dictatorship, to begin to raise the spectre that a new world is indeed possible, that we have to unite all of the peoples of the world. And what sort of world could we construct? We have the grotesque position where half the world were living in conditions akin to that which existed in the 15th century, of misery, starvation, illiteracy, where even in the richest countries of the world, the United States and Europe, the minimum interests of ordinary people they cannot guarantee. And yet what world would be possible? We have new technology, the likes of which our grandparents could only dream about in terms of what is possible. We have new robots being invented which can undertake marvels. We have medical operations that can be directed from New York here to carry out on a patient in a hospital bed in London. It is incredible the scientific achievements which have been made by humankind over the course of the past period. And yet, what does this dictatorship of the market mean? It means that in the next 20 years, they're going to introduce robotics, which are going to mean that 47% of the workforce in the United States, that 35% of the workforce in Britain are to be made unemployed, are to be made left destitute. What a madness in terms of what sort of society we have. If we have such technology, why can that not be used for the benefit of the whole of humankind? Why is it not possible? situation where this new technology means mass unemployment and lower wages? Why can we not have the situation which was anticipated by the economist Milton Keynes in 1930, where we could use this new technology to slash the working week to 15 hours is what he anticipated. And we could do that if this new technology was introduced and planned. And that's another word they absolutely detest. You pose the issue of planning to the spokespersons and the capitalists, to the politicians and the rich and powerful. They absolutely detest us because we pose the issue of planning. And you know, it's utter hypocrisy on their part. Anybody here working for a major multinational corporation, Boeing, Ford, anybody else, don't they plan? They plan. They plan how many cars they want to produce. The major supermarket chains, they plan how much food they want to come into a supermarket and how much they intend to sell. But there's a difference. They want to plan it, to use it, to secure the maximum profits for themselves. We want to plan it, to use the technology capacity to provide for the needs democratically of the whole of the population, to ensure that what humankind is capable of producing can really be used for the benefit of people and not to satisfy the fat bank accounts of the 1% that rule this planet at the present time. And that is what we're fighting for. And they tell us that the great and powerful are great and powerful, and many workers, intimidated, the mocked down, trodden and oppressed, often, as we all do, we look at these rich fat cats and maybe we feel a little bit intimidated by the power that they seem to have. The media, the Fox News, the Sky, all of the apparatus that they have at their disposal. And yes, they can appear to be very powerful. But you know, as one great socialist once said, the great and the powerful only appear great when we're on our knees. We stand up together and they're not so big. But we need to fashion instruments of struggle, parties that will speak for us to fight for our interests. But we have to take a warning. We have to take a warning from our history, from the great history of the struggles of working people internationally. As workers here in the United States, the Greek workers, the Spanish workers, the Portuguese workers have fought like lions against this austerity package. 40 general strikes in Greece, the biggest general strike in the history of Spain. Hundreds of thousands on the streets of Portugal. A clamour for strike action in Britain against the government. Unfortunately, we've been betrayed by the compromising role of some of our so-called trade union and labour leaders. They have not had half the willingness, they haven't been prepared to lift their little finger in order to conduct a real struggle. But the working people have fought. They've tried to fight, but they've run against the brick wall. In Greece, they built a new party, Syriza, anti-austerity party. It was elected to power, and then it was intimidated. Then the power of the rich and ruling elite of the European Union was thrown down on their backs. And unfortunately and tragically, they capitulated and betrayed. But in that betrayal, there is a lesson for us all. That if we're going to stand up and fight against this ruling elite that rules this planet, that rules the different countries of this planet, then we had better be prepared to go all the way. Yes. Because they are not prepared, no ruling group in history, and certainly not this ruling 1%, are going to be prepared to simply step aside. They're going to fight to defend their interests. They will throw everything they've got at us to try and maintain their wealth, their privilege and their power. And we need the same determination that they have. If we're going to struggle as we must against their policies of austerity, if we're going to struggle as we must against their policy and their system, that we need parties and leaders that are prepared to have a programme to go the whole way and to overthrow and to break this system and usher in a new world. To begin to take the ownership of the economy into our own hands, to plan it and to use it for the interests of working people. Not just to have an existence, where half this planet can't even eke out an existence. They are suffering under such poverty and the tyranny of oppression. We need to build a real world. If I could borrow a few words from the great writer Jack London, where the proper function of man, as he said, is to live and not to exist. Yes. We want to build a world where humankind can really begin to live, without the burden of poverty, without the burden of misery and despair thrust upon them, where they have the economic well-being to live in a satisfied style, the time, the opportunity to develop their tremendous talents in music, art, culture, whatever other aspects of the human being that have. But their system is global. They're organised internationally. Their multinational companies come together to plot and to plan to defend their global interests. They have their own international meetings to conspire against the 99% of this planet. And so too we need to come together in a common struggle with common interests. We in Europe, you in America, the peoples of Asia, Africa and Latin America all stand together as one. We're all human beings on this planet in struggle for our own interests and rights against the ruling elite which are dominating it at this particular time. We therefore, comrades, need to come together and fight together, to draw inspiration from each other's victories, to learn from each other's defeats, to forge and harness a movement which can really begin to challenge this capitalist system and open the way for a struggle to transform this planet, to allow humankind for the first time to begin to build a really genuinely human society, to bury poverty, to bury war, to bury want, to put it into the museum of history, to come together in one great international movement. If I again could borrow from the great Eugene Debs, the socialist of this country, where he commented, "I have no country, for my country is the earth, and I am a citizen of the world. We are all citizens of the world. Let us unite together in a common struggle against global capitalism with our common objective to fight to build a decent human society, a socialist world which can really offer a way forward for the future of humankind." Our choice in the next years and decades is one which is clear. Today we see capitalism in crisis globally. We have sections of humanity plunged back into the desperation of barbarism. The crisis in the environment, the crisis in the economy, poses a future clearly and starkly before us. Barbarism or socialism? Let us take this great victory here in Seattle as an inspiration that we have a choice before us to take, and let us make sure that that choice indeed is a future of socialism where we can bury capitalism and barbarism and begin the task of building a new world that can offer a real future for the whole of humankind.